Okay, so you know how we're always talking about ethics in behavioral health? Well, get this. We're taking a deep dive into something a little different this time. We're looking at organizational ethics.
Yeah, it's not just about whether your individual therapist is following the rules. It's about whether the whole company, the whole culture, is committed to doing what's right.
Exactly. And that led us to this organization called the Behavioral Health Center of Excellence, BHCOE for short. Have you heard of them?
Oh yeah, BHCOE is doing some really fascinating work.
So for those of us who aren't familiar, what's the story there? What's BHCOE all about?
Well, it's not like they just appeared out of nowhere. What's really interesting is that BHCOE actually emerged from two separate but totally related efforts that were happening around the same time.
Okay, now you've got me curious. Tell me more about these two paths that led to BHCOE.
All right, so picture this. It's the early 2000s, and Dr. John Bailey, who's a big name in behavioral ethics, starts getting all these questions, not just from individual practitioners, but from people inside organizations.
Like people who work at these behavioral health organizations.
Exactly. And they're struggling with ethical dilemmas at work. You know, they want to do right by their clients, but something's holding them back.
Interesting. What kind of dilemmas are we talking about here?
Well, it varied, but a common theme was that the organizations themselves were creating these ethical binds. Like, imagine you're a therapist and you see your supervisor doing something questionable, but you're afraid to speak up because you might lose your job.
Wow. Yeah, that's a tough spot to be in. So it's not enough for just the individual therapist to be ethical. The whole organization needs to support that ethical behavior.
That's exactly the point. And that was kind of the first piece of the puzzle, recognizing that we need ethical organizations, not just ethical individuals. Now, for the second piece of the puzzle, let's head over to California.
Okay, California, all right. What was going on out west that ties into the BHCOE story?
So California was trying to figure out how to measure quality in behavioral health organizations, especially after this big ABA organization went belly up.
Oh, wow. And I'm guessing it didn't go well.
Not really. It left hundreds of families scrambling for services. It was a whole big mess. And this actually became a catalyst for BHCOE.
I can see why. What a disaster. So are you saying this California situation, this organization that went bankrupt, was the direct inspiration for BHCOE?
It definitely played a role. This California thing, it really highlighted the need for standards, transparency, accountability, all that good stuff. And that's where BHCOE stepped in.
Okay, so they saw a problem, a real need for something like BHCOE, and they went for it.
Yeah.
I like it. But how did they actually get started? What were their first steps?
Well, they started small, focusing on the basics, like making sure staff were qualified and that organizations were marketing their services ethically.
Yeah, you'd hope those would already be standard practices, right?
You would think so, but someone needed to make sure. And over time, this kind of snowballed into a much bigger deal, a full-blown accreditation process.
Accreditation. Okay, that makes sense. So it's like a seal of approval saying, hey, this organization is legit. They're doing things the right way.
Exactly. And here's where it gets even more interesting. They incorporated something called COEBO, which stands for the Code of Ethics for Behavioral Organizations.
Hold on, that rings a bell. Didn't Dr. Bailey, the ethics guy we were talking about earlier, have something to do with that?
You got a great memory. You see, while California was grappling with this quality control issue, Dr. Bailey's work on those organizational ethics questions was really taking shape. And that's how COEBO was born.
Wow, so it's like these two separate paths, California needing standards and Bailey developing this ethics code, they kind of converged at just the right time.
Right. It's pretty remarkable how it all came together.
It really is. But what exactly is COEBO? I mean, I get that it's an ethics code, but what's actually in it and how does it all fit in with BHCOE?
Well, think of it this way. We've got the BACB's ethics code for individual practitioners, right? COEBO does the same thing, but for entire organizations.
Oh, okay. So it's like the organizational version of the BACB's ethics code. That makes sense.
Yeah. It's basically saying, hey, it's not enough for just your clinicians to be ethical. The whole structure, the whole culture of the organization needs to support ethical behavior.
Okay, I get it. But what does that look like in practice? Give me an example of what's actually in COEBO.
Okay, I think I'm starting to wrap my head around this whole COEBO thing. It's like the ethical backbone of BHCOE. Right. But I gotta know, what kind of stuff does it actually address? Like, give me an example.
All right, well, let's talk about those patient recruitment incentives we touched on earlier.
Oh, yeah, like organizations offering bonuses or kickbacks for referrals.
Exactly. COEBO lays down the law on that, making it super clear that offering those kinds of incentives is a big no-no.
Which is huge, because if COEBO had been around back then, maybe that whole mess in California could have been avoided. Who knows what kind of desperate measures that organization was taking to try to stay afloat?
Right.
That's exactly the point. COEBO helps prevent those desperate measures by setting a clear ethical standard right from the start. And it goes beyond just preventing shady practices. It's about building a culture of positive ethics.
Okay, I like that. So it's not just about avoiding bad stuff, it's about actually promoting good stuff.
Right. For example, COEBO says that organizations have to have policies to protect their employees' privacy, and that's something that benefits everyone involved.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like COEBO is pretty comprehensive, which is great. But how does BHCOE actually enforce all of this? Like, what happens if an organization just slaps a BHCOE sticker on their website but doesn't actually follow the code?
Ah, that's where the teeth come in. Remember we talked about
Yeah.
that. BHCOE doesn't just give out accreditations and call it a day.
So there are actual consequences if an organization doesn't walk the walk.
You bet. Organizations have to prove they're meeting the COEBO standards. They have to submit documentation. They go through site visits, the whole 9 yards.
Wow, so BHCOE is really serious about this.
Oh, absolutely. And if they find that an organization isn't living up to the COEBO standards, they can investigate. They can offer guidance. And yeah, they can even revoke accreditation if they have to.
Wow, so it's not just about getting a gold star and then going back to business as usual. There's real accountability there.
Exactly. And that's what makes BHCOE so impactful. They're creating a system where organizations are held accountable, not just for the quality of the services they're providing, but for the ethical foundation they're built on.
This is all starting to click for me now. We've got these two paths, Bailey figuring out the need for organizational ethics and California needing to get a handle on quality control. And they both kind of led to this amazing system. It's actually pretty remarkable how it all came
It
together.
really is. And there's one more piece of this puzzle I think you'll find really interesting.
Oh, there's more. Don't leave me hanging. I'm all ears.
Remember how we were talking about those individual practitioners who were facing those tough ethical dilemmas within their organizations?
Yeah, the ones who felt like they couldn't speak up.
Right. Well, BHCOE actually addresses that directly. They require all accredited organizations to have internal ethics committees.
Hold on, wait a minute. So it's not just about the whole organization being ethical. They each have to have this internal structure to support ethical decision-making, too.
You got it. It's pretty groundbreaking, actually.
That's huge. I mean, think about it. Before BHCOE, what would a practitioner in that situation even do? Who would they go to for help? It's like BHCOE is creating this safety net, not just for the clients, but for the practitioners too, you know?
Exactly. And this is where I think the impact of BHCOE really starts to ripple outwards.
Because if an organization is prioritizing ethics like that, it's going to attract practitioners who also prioritize ethics, right?
Well, you would certainly hope so.
Yeah.
And that brings up a really interesting question. How is BHCOE impacting the entire field of behavioral health?
So we've gone from like individual practitioners trying to be ethical to this whole system of holding entire organizations accountable. That's amazing and all. But how does this actually impact the people who need it most? The clients, the families who are looking for behavioral health services, how do they even know about any of this?
That's the real question, isn't it? It all boils down to awareness.
Because BHCOE could be doing all this amazing work, but if nobody knows about it, does it even matter?
Right. It's like, think about when you're looking for a restaurant, you might check the reviews online or see if they have a good health inspection rating, right?
Yeah, totally.
We need that same kind of awareness around BHCOE accreditation.
So it's about making BHCOE accreditation like a thing that people actually look for and understand.
Exactly. Imagine a world where asking, are you BHCOE accredited,
Yeah,
is like asking about insurance coverage. It could be that normal.
I love that. So it's not just on BHCOE to do all the work, it's on all of us to be more informed consumers.
Absolutely. The more we talk about this, the more we get the word out, the closer we get to that vision. And then organizations, they'll start realizing that being ethical is actually good for business.
It's like a win-win for everyone. Clients get better care, and ethical organizations get the recognition they deserve.
Exactly.
Wow, this has been seriously eye-opening. I feel like I've learned so much about organizational ethics today.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Knowledge is power, right? But only if we actually use it.
So true. And on that note, for everyone listening, here's a little challenge for you. Next time you talk to anyone about behavioral health, ask about ethics. Ask if they're BHCOE accredited, if they have an internal ethics committee, things like that. You might be surprised by what you learn.
I love that challenge.
Yeah, you're right.
Because at the end of the day, ethics in behavioral health, it's not just about rules and regulations. It's about making sure everyone feels safe, respected,
Yeah.
you know, and that they're getting the best possible care.
Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the world of organizational ethics and BHCOE. Until next time, keep asking those tough questions. We'll see you next time.